listening to The Daily Show.
The Daily Show?
The Daily Show.
The Daily Show.
On Men's Radio.
Men's Radio.
Men's Radio.
Men's Radio.
With Russ Kane.
Just when you thought the 1980s were over. Hi, everybody. I'm Russ Kane. This is The Daily Show, exclusive to Men's Radio Station, part of the Soundmind Radio Group. More of that later down the road. Got a hell of a week planned for you this week. A heck of a week. A really, really fascinating show coming up today. Talking of people who are fascinating, who are finishing their brunch, who are full of joie de vivre. I'm just looking at him now. Thank God you can't see this. Ladies and gentlemen, you know him. You love him. Neil Long.
I'm really glad you didn't bring me on 10 seconds ago because I was sneezing vigorously.
I could see that. I thought you were having an attack. The honey. It was for the honey. You haven't seen that film, have you?
No, I was sneezing vigorously.
Remake of The Wicker Man, just the worst pile of poo ever. Hello to Dave Sleet. We'll try and get up
Good
before
afternoon,
you go back
Dave.
to Scotland. Hello, Dave Sleet, Mr. Head of ANA and Facebook user. Good afternoon, one and all. You have to press a little button because it just comes up on my thing as Facebook user. How was your weekend, fella? Was it all right?
Oh, I had a lovely weekend. I went away with my daughter.
Oh, bouncy castle. Ball
Not
pit.
exactly. We went up the Spinnaker Tower, which is in Portsmouth.
Oh, yes, I've driven past it, yes.
Yeah, and you can go up in it, and they've got a glass walkway where you can walk across it and look straight down.
No, thank you. No.
And they tell you that the glass, yes, is tough and glass, but it's only 6 centimeters thick.
Yeah, there isn't enough dry cleaners in the world to get me through doing that because I'm not good.
I did it. I was determined to do it.
And it was okay. Let's say hello, Julie Voice, formerly of Houston, Texas, now of Guildford. I never get tired of saying that. Hello, everyone. I'm walking in the rain with the one I love, my dog, and your mate, Robert Van Buren.
Hello, RVB.
And thank you so much for a delightful evening on Friday. Linda Dave. Hello, Russ and Neil. Linda was the most hospitable hostess. Right, gang, on to business. This is someone I've known for quite a while, and I like to get him as involved as I can with Men's Radio Station because he comes at things from angles that I can't and you can't, but he can, and you'll see why in a minute. He's a social gadfly and one of the smartest men in London. I've never seen anyone dressed so smart. Stephen Smith.
Oh, hi, good morning. How are you both?
We're good, thank you.
Good,
Stephen,
we're good.
how are you?
How you doing, Stephen?
Yeah, really good, thank you. I can't complain. I'm a bit casual today. I've just got like a t-shirt on. I'm usually in smart outfits, but I thought a bit casual.
Well, Stephen normally, I have to tell you, Longie, normally is in an immaculate sort of three-piece suit that just looks like he stepped out of the fashion plate on the phone. He really pisses me off quite a bit. To be honest, he does. He does.
Oh, come on, Russ. You always look good when you're out.
Well, yeah, for an old geese, I do my best. Now, Stephen, there is a lot to unpack here, and I'm excited about this. You wanted to, you suggested, and we were chit-chatting, about the way that people get tried in public and what it does to them for their mental health. And how we've moved from, and I'm just going to introduce it, then I'm handing it over to you, because it's something Neil and I feel very strongly about. How we've moved from you're innocent until you're proved guilty, and now we live in the court of public opinion, the court of social media. Doesn't matter what the facts are, let's just get the story out there. And there'll be another one breaking this week, which I can't say more about, but it'll be huge and even more unpleasant. So off you go. Tell us your viewpoint on it.
Well, we're one away from putting a cross in the middle of Covent Garden and setting fire to people. This is a huge witch hunt. And the British government must be really, really happy because all that's going on at the moment, the front cover of the papers are covered in one man, Hugh Edwards, who really at the end of the day is just the equivalent of a dirty old man. He's done nothing really. and it's becoming a giant witch hunt. And I find it very frightening for the LGBT community. I find it very frightening.
That's why when I said you can discuss things from a perspective that neither Neil or I can, because you're gay, you talk about it, you write about it. It's something that you're very vocal about. And that's why I wanted to get you on particular.
I think first of all, as a human being, we should be worried about it. Because we now have social media trying people, and I mean, it's horrific. There's a good chance that Hugh Edwards, with all that was going on, could have killed himself, and we're responsible for it as the public. He hasn't actually been found guilty of anything. And there's such double standards going on as well. You've got Philip Schofield, right? You've got Hugh Edwards, and I wake up yesterday morning, and all over social media is the usual suspects. And you've got Rolf Harris, you've got Jimmy Savile, and then you've got Hugh Edwards, and pardon me, because it's quite correct. Hugh Edwards went as basically having a relationship with a younger man, as was Philip Schofield. Now, in the heterosexual world, right? Well, let's start with females. Females go out with younger people. They're called cougars, right?
Yep.
Okay, heterosexual man is a gold star if you're going out with someone younger. But because someone's gay and going out with someone younger, and there's a big difference between grooming and going out with someone younger, they're suddenly vilified, and this witch hunt starts where they should be burnt at the stake. And it's terribly frightening.
Stephen, there's so much to unpack there.
Yeah.
Let's just start bit by bit.
Yeah.
One thing that I objected to, and I wrote back to somebody, and I agree, they sent me some sort of meme linking Hugh Edwards, who I don't know, Philip Schofield, who I don't know, with monsters like Savile and Rolf Harris, etc., and Gary Glitter. They are monsters and deserve to be in prison or preferably dead, which they are.
Well, they're mentally ill.
Apart from fine. So we've got that. So linking that is extremely unpleasant. It's not the same thing, and I think Neil and I have talked about this.
It's not, and it's this conflation of the two that annoys me. And I remember hearing from a certain segment of people, and I did not agree with it at the time, and I still don't. They were just linking being gay and linking that with being a predator just because somebody was gay. And to me, I thought that was utter crap at the time.
Unfortunately, but you're so right. So it's unfortunate, and I keep telling people this. They say to me, "Oh, we live in London, which seems like a gay-friendly area." Outside of London, there's still people that link paedophiles with gays.
Yes.
And that's why it's so important. People say to me, "Why do we have pride?" Well, I said, because we need it. And until you can, people stop asking questions of gay people like, when did you first come out? And things like that. You need to keep fighting constantly.
Why?
I heard that
I got to stop you there.
years
Hang on.
ago, back in the
you.
80s. I mean, is that still a thing now? People still conflate those two?
Sorry, I missed the question.
Oh, sorry. There's a bit of a delay here. I heard that trope sort of back in the 80s, but is that still a thing now? People conflate those two?
Well, what's trope? I'm so sorry. I don't.
Oh, that conflation of being gay and being a predator, that false conflation.
Well, I think there's a wonderful saying, something I watched. If you took heterosexual men and put them in a room with 100 bunny girls, what would the results be? Predator.
I don't know.
So I think there's always going to be men are always going to be slightly more predatory, but it doesn't mean they're going to be predatory as in taking advantage. There's a big difference. Guys go out on the weekends, girls go out. Girls are much more predatory now than they're told to. So there's a big difference. But what worries me here is, going back to the subject, is Hugh Edwards. He's been treated like Jeffrey Dahmer, turning up to the gay men's choir. He hasn't actually, there's a difference between, when I was just turned 16, and a lot prettier and younger, I was approached quite quickly when I was at the gay scene and invited to a party. I was really looking forward to it, taken down to the countryside, arrive, famous pop star. Oh, how exciting. He filled me up with booze, and as Dorothy Parker said, I ended up underneath the host. Now, I went back many a time and went to various parties, and I didn't really think about it until I saw my 16-year-old nephew. I thought to myself, God, if someone did that to him, I would kill them. You know, there's a you suddenly realise that so there's a difference between grooming and someone legitimately, say, 18, 19, wanting to go out with a 30-year-old, a 40-year-old. You know, there's no crime against it.
No.
Let me ask you this, because this is grown-up radio. We don't pull our punches, and this is why I was keen to have you on today, and delighted. You're always very welcome, as you know. I'm going to try and put this delicately. Philip Schofield always pretended he was happily married with children.
Yeah.
Hugh Edwards, for all we know, is happily married with children. All right. They're not openly, well, Philip Schofield is now, but I think it was kind of, well, be careful. I don't want to get into litigation on this. They came up, but they were portrayed as initially heterosexual, happily married with children. And do you think all of this sets back the, I'm just going to put it under, call it the GM, you know, the gay, if I may put it under.
The LGBT scene.
Yes.
First of all, in America, it's called being in the down low. It means you're a heterosexual man, but you actually sleep with men and are in a relationship with a woman. And there are many relationships out there where perhaps the woman isn't particularly interested in sex, but happy to be in a marriage with a man that can tell her what to wear and have a different life. So that's been going on for years, right?
Yes. And what's it called, Stephen? What's it called in America?
Being on the down low.
On the down low. Okay.
Yeah, so it's quite called heterosexual men who, you know, pretend. The problem is with Philip Schofield, this is my problem, I wrote about him, was I didn't have a problem. I don't associate him with his brother. I think it's a terrible thing to associate him with. He hasn't done that. What is the problem is we're being sold one thing and getting another. You know, the British public, I mean, I, for one, had enough of Philip Schofield. If I saw one more show and presented by Philip Schofield, I thought, oh, goodness sake, there must be other presenters out there. The problem I had, he was selling one thing to the Daily Mail readers that made them happy. Here I am, I'm a heterosexual man. And then what happened is he eventually, I presume, got pushed out. So he came out. And then it wasn't particularly grabbed by the gay community. They weren't too thrilled about it. In fact, he was booed at Pride. But the LGBT leaders, he was booed at Pride.
Why?
Why is that? Why?
Because we all knew that it wasn't quite cut and dry, that he didn't just go, hi, I'm coming out, I'm an I brave. It wasn't particularly that, was it? I think
it's the subtext to that. And again, we're being very...
We have to be very careful what we say here.
Is the subtext, it was rather be... Did he jump or was he pushed?
So
terribly.
So the feeling in the community was it was more. So that was the general feeling. However, and he hadn't done anything particularly amazing, but he won an award from the LGBTQ awards, which everyone I know thinks, what for?
Well, I was going to before I could see Neil about to pounce. It's like, and what for? What exactly?
And what for? Give that kid that had to fight through a council estate, who's had nothing, who made it in life. Yeah, an award. Someone's escaping a country like Iran that's come here and fought and made themselves. Yes, give them an award. Philip Schofield, he did nothing. But because he's a celebrity, the LGBT community hierarchy went, oh yeah, let's grab on him.
Okay, all right. Okay, it seems to me though, when you look at the law, and again, I'm being really cautious, as I know that you all and Neil, of course, as a professional, will be as well. It seems to me that when you look at what actually happened, has any law been broken? And in these huge cases, because actually they're tiny cases, but the media makes them into, World War III.
Yes,
it would appear at the time of this broadcast, which is live, that no actual law has been broken.
Absolutely nothing. Right? Absolutely no law whatsoever.
It's the trial by public. It's court of public opinion, which is the problem. And as Russ says, these are. No laws have been broken. It's a tiny case. And I keep going back to this. Have we learned nothing through the tragedy of Caroline Flack.
Yeah.
Caroline Flack. You know, because being in the spotlight like this and having your whole identity, your whole sense of whoever you are, your whole life pulled out from under you, that could absolutely wreck someone. And the people behind that do need to be held accountable. Speaking as a mental health advocate, I really think so.
That's what I'm saying.
Gay or straight, it doesn't matter. Anybody.
The number of
Here's the thing,
suicides.
Stephen, let me ask you this. This is coming on from a colleague of ours, Liz Saul, who works for the BBC. Then, of course, there are the colleagues of the person accused and the impact it has on them. One of the most pernicious things they were doing is and again, no names, putting names of certain high-profile just photos, and then an article, right? A speculative article. A lot of people are very lazy. They look at the photo, they go, it's him. But it wasn't. They just had a photo up there. That is so unfair.
I mean, it's always but that's always been the problem with papers, is people read headlines and look at a picture and they don't actually read a lot of the content. So this is the huge problem with this whole thing, is people see a name and they add it to it. I mean, there was WhatsApp groups about Philip Schofield ages before the whole story broke that I know of, and with Hugh Edwards, it became like a frenzy. I mean, my goodness, there's kids starving in the street, and we seem less bothered about that and more bothered about Hugh Edwards, which is appalling. I mean, it's tragic.
It's easier to destroy one.
Just by a paper.
One person to
I'm a big
defender.
defender of the Sun newspaper, but I hate to point out to them, Jordan, Katie Price, was 17, 18.
Are you?
Yes, I'm a big supporter of the Sun, because Sun is supply and demand. People want to buy papers. If they didn't buy papers or get papers, the Sun would be gone. So, but however, in this case, the Sun has Samantha Fox, 17 years old, when she was a page 3 girl. Katie Price.
She was 16.
She's 16. So there we go. 16.
And then
they're pointing a finger at someone because they're with a younger person. It's like it's like suddenly you're on television, so that's a whole different set of morals. Hugh Edwards is not a member of the church.
Well, there's two things. Two things here, if I may.
Yeah.
Number one, I've met a lot back in the day when page 3 was a thing. I've met a lot of these page 3 girls and their mums. And before I knew you'd laugh. It is the mums who put them forward in nearly every case. And I'm not.
I went with the page 3 girls for
people don't know
5
that. People
years.
think that people think there's some young kid and she's gonna get out there. But the mums are really supportive. They think this is wonderful. I never understood. And you meet them; they're completely normal, very quiet, normal people. I get that. The other thing is this, though. This is a slightly more thing, and I'm going to read out. Neil, would you be so kind? And then I'm just going to.
Yes, this is interesting. Have we as a society a hugely skewed expectation that all media types must be whiter than white? Does what someone does in their own time, however morally wrong, affect their ability to do their job? And I would say probably not. But I would extend that to all types. When did we set these standards of perfection, look at the standards of beauty on social media, and then hold people to these unrealistic standards? Yeah. As long as you're not deliberately doing anybody any harm, and you're not breaking any laws, I don't see why people shouldn't do what they want to do.
Steve, let me ask you this.
That's exactly why I said.
Stephen,
sorry, go on. Yeah.
But Stephen, let me ask you this. That was coming out of the point that Scott was making up in Wolverhampton. My point is this: if you have the premier news broadcaster in the country who is on the nationalized television station that we all pay for, how can you sit there and watch someone who's gone through all of this telling us what to do and giving us this is the man, remember, who, I don't care what he does in his private life, it had been kept private. I don't care, it's none of my business. But this is the man who had the honor of leading the nation's mourning for Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. I'm not being pompous about it. It's true. I was deeply moved. It's one of the most important moments in my life. It may not be in everybody else's, but that's how I feel about it. So,
Yeah.
how can you differentiate that? Don't you think? It was the same with Max Mosley. Do you remember that? Max Mosley was
the S&M.
Yeah. Max Mosley, a very, very powerful figure, one of the most senior people in Formula One, which is a multi-billion-pound global industry, as you know. And he said, well, my private life's my private life. Does it affect his job? But does it affect his job? No. It doesn't affect his job.
I think he introduced S&M before Madonna did.
Well, there you go. Yep, there you go.
Became trendy. I mean, all the man had done was enjoy a good spanking.
Well, that's it.
The problem.
I think I prefer Madonna's take on it to his, to be honest with you. But there you go.
Yeah.
I'm not crazy about either, but good luck.
But it became a fashionable thing at one point.
Whatever floats your boat. Whatever floats your boat. It's not our concern.
But anyway, but I say, Hugh Edwards. Well, my concern is how it turned into such a witch hunt, and took over all and the Standard front page. I mean, appalling. I say serial killers haven't as much publicity.
I don't get it. I don't get it when we're going to finally wake up as a society and see the damage that we are doing to each other with this trial by media. It's I don't get it as someone that's thought long and hard about mental health.
Yes.
Otherwise, why would I be doing shows like this? I don't. It's just so bleeding obvious to me, which is what you're saying, I guess, isn't it?
And what's happening is you get the word gay associated with something. We've fought very hard for positive, and then people don't, as I said, people don't read the headlines, the whole copy, and you get backlash. Now we've got people protesting outside schools because a drag queen is reading stories. I would rather leave my child or my nephew with 5 drag queens than 5 priests. There's no danger with a drag queen, right? But the stories of priests, and equally with trans rights, they're going on about toilets and raping. But the Metropolitan Police have had more cases of rapes against the public than anyone trans.
I'm very wary about getting into the trans debate because it is a most unholy minefield.
Just because someone is gay or trans, that doesn't mean they don't live their life in integrity.
Yeah, because many do. Your lawyers are gay. Your doctors.
Most gay or trans people I know have incredible integrity, or pick any other so-called minority. The majority do. Yeah, you'll get a couple of bad apples in every car, but that's every car. It's not the sexuality that is the defining factor any more than it's the colour of the skin. It's ridiculous.
Which comes all the way back, and I agree with Neil wholeheartedly here, but it comes all the way back to kind of my initial question to you, Stephen, is this. It doesn't help anyone's cause, does it?
No, because it's nobody's cause. And as I say, I think we need to somehow or other get the press to be... I mean, for starters, the Daily Mail, God bless them, they have the comments underneath the pieces. Have you read some of them ever?
Oh yeah.
They're back to the days of the theatre where they used to throw rotten apples. It's horrendous, and they just switch all of those off for starters. Nobody needs to hear the comments; they're just hateful. The Sun and the other papers, until someone is proven really guilty of something, need to tread carefully and learn from Caroline Flack and other people that have taken their lives because of press that have done nothing. And it's time to take some responsibility.
The interesting thing about absolutely. I just want to say one thing, and then Neil, please make your point. It's a good point. What is interesting, I've said it before on the show, on the Daily Show, and I will say it again, that some of the people who were the most vociferous, and I'm going to say vicious as well, no names, please, about destroying Philip Schofield, who I've never met, who I don't know. I have no inside knowledge on the chap at all, right? They were the ones in the vanguard of the fight and the movement against Caroline Flack. I mean, the hypocrisy is.
But do you remember when we talked in previous shows and we talked about psychological concepts and we
Yes.
talked about projection? Projection is basically saying when you point the finger, there's three pointed back at you. So when someone's, I once was having this conversation. He was telling me how much he hated people that had affairs. I can't stand people that do that. They are the worst people in the world. People that have affairs, I can't stand them. Guess what he was doing?
Having an affair.
Yeah.
You win the speedboat, but we're still going for the holiday in Barbados.
So it's a little bit more complex. It's like people can't own what they see as the unacceptable side of themselves. So rather than
it's hypocrisy. I mean,
they kind of project it out on people, and it manifests. That's the psychological explanation, but it manifests in the real world as the incredible hypocrisy that we're seeing nowadays. It really, really is. I mean,
there's going to be another story that's going to break this week. If they manage to suppress it, it will be a miracle, because this thing has been bubbling up, and this is someone who is really disliked, and the knives will be out, and if that breaks, I hate to use the word hypocrisy again. It's like, you got to be kidding me. Now, this is interesting. Let's get legal for a sec. This is from Scott Lyons in Wolverhampton. He says the IPSO, the Independent Press, help me out, somebody, organization. What's the S
Standards.
for? Thank you.
Press standards.
Thank you, Neil.
I'll look it up.
So sorry. IPSOs are a toothless tiger. If they aren't already, they should be investigating the Sun's manner of reporting and impose the most serious penalties against suspension. Really? Suspension. Now, this is worrying as well. Neil, would you be so kind?
I'm just putting up what IPSO stands for. And that's
Paul Claridge,
that's that for you.
Independent Press Standards Organisation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pop the comment back on and I'll read it out.
Oh, bless you. Thanks, fella. There we go. From Paul Claridge.
A drag event in Honour Oak, South East London, had to have protection from the Met Police when protesters, who looked like the old National Front, turned up to protest. Fighting broke out in the street outside Honour Oak pub, with the police caught in the middle of both groups.
Do you think? I'm going to ask a really difficult question, and you're going to get cross, Stephen. But I've known you.
Why would I get cross?
Because you might. But do you think it's? I'm really torn here. I'm a Londoner. Neil's a Londoner. Born and bred London. Probably have Neil, not posh than me, Neilson, sorry, but he has been known to come to London. Mrs. Mickens pie shop. Anyway, not the point. Right, here's the thing. You know, if you're in Soho, you don't even notice it. I get this outside. You've made the point already earlier in the show that when you're outside London, London's its own bubble. We know that. It's its own country, basically. Different rules apply. Do you think it's gone too far, or do you think it hasn't gone too far? You know, if you get police cars painted in rainbows and the zebra crossings are painted in rainbows, do you think people are just? I know this is really simplistic. I think people are fed up with it.
I think what's happened is there's been so much bad press for LGBTQ and particularly the T, that the right wing have decided, look, great, and got very confused here because drag queens are not T. They're performers, for starters. Drag queens have been with us since the beginning of time, practically. Shakespeare had them, and it's one of Britain's great attributes. We go and see them every year in Panto, and we love them.
And do you know what? I've just been away with my daughter, Stephen, for the weekend, and she got me into watching RuPaul's Drag
Oh my
Race.
God, it's addictive.
It is totally Ginger Minge. I love Ginger Minge.
It's brilliant.
Please don't edit that bit cleverly of me saying that.
I'm gonna do something.
Let me finish here. Please. So what I'm trying to say is, drag queens are to be respected. They're performers. They're no harm to your kids. If anything, they're going to be more fun and make them have a happier time. Better than taking them to see a priest. Trust me.
Well, I'm with you. Now, I'm not going to put the comments up, but you can see on the screen. And if you're listening to this show and not watching it, okay. This is from a gentleman who says, why, I'm going to read it, and I want Stephen's reaction. Okay. What's gone now? Why do these dragsters want access to our children? And the next point that's made, wow. All right, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do it. We've got to be brave. The children. No, I've got to be brave. I'm very uncomfortable with this. I'll be honest with you. I'm really uncomfortable with it. The children need protecting from men dressed like prostitutes.
Oh, for God's sake!
No, I know that, but this chap's opinion. It's not my opinion.
They don't want access to your children, for God's sake.
God bless them. God bless them. What world are you living in? But
that's the last thing they want.
Put it up. There you go.
Drag queen are artists. They're performers. They're not men dressed as prostitutes, and they're there sometimes reading story time. They're bringing happiness. They're going into the schools and producing something different, something nice, and it might teach kids that not everyone's the exact same. That's the most danger you get out of it.
Oh, you see, we got. Oh, hang on, this is getting. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Okay, look, we've got to make a decision. We can either be brave and open and embrace, and let's talk about this. I'm going to shut it down, but I don't think we should shut it down.
Well, no, absolutely
if
not.
You're up
happy
for it,
to.
Stephen. Only if you're up for it.
Well, don't.
Okay. All right.
I've been on this planet
I don't know this person. I don't know this person. This is a new viewer and listener to the show.
Well,
all right. I'm just going to put it up there. Let's see what Stephen and Neil have to say.
Wow.
Panto. This is the comment from Shakila Chohan. Panto has nothing to do. Wow, with what the drag queens are up to. Grooming children. Are you serious about this? Sir? I mean, I'm not being rude about you at all. I don't know you, and thank you for watching the show. Thank you for being part of Men's Radio. But
thank you for sharing your opinion, because it shows my point that there are people out there that are getting very confused. And they think because someone dresses as a woman and they're a performer, that there's some kind of grooming going on of children. Well, in fact, there's not. As they say, that priests going into schools.
Now we've got this from Sherry. Now we've got this coming up. No, it's the fact. It's always a worry. The fact. It's being pushed in what? Sherry, I don't know you. Okay, but what is being pushed in school? What exactly do you mean? It's a serious question.
Yeah, what agenda is being pushed here, Sherry?
What is being pushed in school?
Well, there's two schools.
Sherry, for you to say something like that, you must believe there is an agenda, and Shaquille must do as well. Yeah. So I want to know what you think the end game is. It's fairly obvious with Shaquille, I think. You think they're being groomed or grooming. But but both of you, what do you think the end game in your opinion? What's the end game here? What are they trying to achieve?
Yeah, I mean, what?
So there's more chances
to be, key, isn't it? You see,
there's more chances to be.
When Steve, you see, what I'm glad I put those, and thank you for those comments. They're your views. They're your views.
They're really important to have these views as well. And I also say to people, don't be offended. You're not offended, are you? I went, no, I'm not offended, because it gives me a chance to answer the question. Precisely. And this is one of my big worries, is especially with things now that people are being shut down because they ask a question. I want to hear the questions, because it proves my point also, as I'm trying to tell you, there are people out there that think that kids are being groomed in schools by drag queens.
What was the but okay, I get a look. I did 9 years of panto, right? Yeah. I'm the last one to say, well, women can't dress as but that's on stage. They don't identify. Let's be clear, there is a difference.
Not to drag queens. Drag queens don't identify as women.
As women.
No, they identify.
Neither did Danny LaRue. Danny LaRue was a bloke.
Was very heterosexual. Sorry, not he was gay, but
well,
but he made it quite clear during the 50s when he came on. Dressed as a man to show that he was a man to the audience if you watch the documentary.
So not all drag queens are gay necessarily.
Not all drag queens are gay, for starters. But I've never met a drag queen that's predatory and groomed. There's nothing on record of being arrested as a drag queen grooming children. There are government officials, priests, police officers, and
I'm not being funny. I'm not being funny. If that were true, that they were grooming children, I mean, surely it would be a little bit visible. Yeah. We're like having a bloody neon sign. I mean, it's ridiculous.
I mean, in America, you've got Christian rights going in and killing children. And I think what I had recently, when a drag queen goes into school and beats a child to death for killing mockingbirds, then we need to talk. But they don't. I'm
going to put something up, and Neil and Stephen are going to go absolutely potty. But here we go. Oh, good God. I'm going to read it out because if you're listening to this, you won't be able to see the comment which I put up on the screen. It's from Shakil Shokhan. I'm just going to read it, okay?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. There is a global leftist, communist, Bolshevik, Marxist, well, Christ, you got everything there. The only thing I haven't got there is Marks and Spencer's agenda to destroy the family unit. The Rainbow Mafia in New York were oncoming saying we're on camera saying we're coming for your children. I saw that. That was fairness. In fairness, there was some event and they started chanting, "We're coming for your children." A very unfortunate thing to say.
Well,
but I don't even know where to unpack this, to be honest.
Well, I'm thinking, I've not heard this before, but if Rainbow Mafia is what I think it means, could it be that there is a very tiny fringe part of a much bigger group that, might be the bad apples in the cart, the naughty ones? Do you know what I mean?
In every group.
Again, you're globalizing to everybody. That's like saying, if I beat someone up, that all white men are violent.
Yeah, it's like I put it this way: if an alien arrived and said, "Show me a heterosexual man," and I took him to Chelsea football ground on a Saturday and found a bloke with a big beer belly with a Union Jack smoking a cigarette and said, "That's a heterosexual man," the heterosexual community would be up in arms.
Okay.
It's not an example.
So the thing is, you can't label everybody under one umbrella. Your example, umbrella. I'd never thought of that, Stephen. Right? I never thought of that. It's a very, very good point. If you said that, I say, well, that's not a good example. Choose.
What about the lawyer? What about this? It's the same with the gay community. Sometimes some of them are going to say the wrong things. It doesn't mean all of us think like that.
No. Can I ask you this, because we're going into it, and it might address some of the points that Shakil is raising here, which is entitled to do. Let's be clear.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
you're entitled. That's your view. I think I heard. Oh, Graham, come on. I think I heard somewhere that the LGBT community want to try and remove the trans community from deep breath LGBTQIA definition, as one is about sexuality and the other is about gender. Does Stephen have a view on this?
Well, I mean, the T community is very welcome, but there's people in the T community that want it removed, and there's people on the LGBT gay people that want it removed. It's their own personal choice on it. But as far as I'm concerned, the T community is very welcome.
I don't think I'm going to go out on a limb here. I get the point, and I think you're absolutely right. However, I don't think the abuse that certain extreme fringes of the T community, as you call it, are. I mean, the pillaring of J.K. Rowling is nothing short of ghastly.
I think it circles back to what you said earlier on, Russ, or it might be you, Stephen, that ultimately we're talking about Hugh Edwards, and it's a tiny case, right? And it's generally the fringes that have the loudest megaphone, and they seem to get the most attention. So the whole thing is very, very disproportionate. And I think Shakil agrees with that. Could you put that comment back on?
I wanted you to finish.
You can't label everyone. I agree, and that's my point. And I think, Shakil, you've been unfortunate enough to hear the rhetoric of a tiny sub-percentage of sub-percentage of sub-percentage, and it's played bigger in your mind than it needs to. Because I'll be absolutely honest with you, the idea of drag queens grooming children, I find absolutely absurd.
You like it or you don't like it?
Shakir, can I just point out to you, when that doctor comes to look after your child happens to be gay, does that bother you? The nurse that's tending to you, does that bother you that someone's gay? You have to remember, you're talking about a small section of the community that might have right-wing or left-wing politics. Most gay people just get on with their life. They're everywhere.
Exactly.
And they help you. And so
exactly.
this
is a political issue gone bad.
Yeah, when you're lying there taking your last breath and a doctor can say it happens to be a drag queen, would it really worry you?
I'd like to know how a drag queen got into the hospital. But
it could be a doctor that's a drag queen. You know, some doctors enjoy dressing in drag.
Could be Patch Adams.
Here is the thing. Here is the thing. This is what's really interesting. And I'm glad that I didn't shut it down. Shaquille said, I'm not bothered at all about the gay community. There you go. I think let's go back to his other point, because other radio stations, won't do it. They'd shut it down. They won't have the grown-up conversation. Or they get hysterical about it. Let's not. We're having a proper. What I love about this, it's a conversation. It's not a row. It's not an argument. Everyone's being reasonable. No, we can't label everybody. I agree, says Shaquille. However, and this is to you, Stephen. What, in your opinion, is the huge global push behind I'm not going to read the whole thing out, it'll take forever, agenda, which is being pushed relentlessly?
Well,
do you feel it's being pushed relentlessly?
Well, we need to keep pushing it relentlessly because, as I keep saying to people, we have issues and people being attacked in the street still, homophobia. We need to keep pushing the issues. Sadly, with all kind of groups, you're going to get a small amount that don't do that politically aren't quite right. But if we don't keep pushing the whole thing out there and showing people who we are, we won't go any further. And things are starting to go backwards because of things like the Hugh Edwards, and it's starting to get worrying for me.
That's my point.
It really worries me.
Is my point, and I think that's what I posed to you. God, about 40 minutes.
It comes down to so basically what you're saying is you're not pushing it because you want to force it on anybody.
Yeah.
You're pushing it because you want to educate people, not because you want to convert people, or if that's the right word, or bring people around to your way of thinking. You're just educating people and saying, look, ignorance is the problem here. And, if we can get comments on like drag queens are grooming our children, no offense, Shaquille, but I find that absolutely absurd. Maybe it's because I watched Drag Race over the weekend. I don't know. But
in fairness, Longie, let me say this. In fairness, if you don't have a conversation like this and you just read a newspaper, and I get where Shaquille's coming from, if you just read a newspaper and you think, wait a minute, what the bloody hell is this? Why are drag queens? What have they got to do with education? Nothing.
A lot.
Well, it's not.
They're artistic. They're performers. They're reading stories to kids. They're capturing their imagination. Well, let's put this way.
Okay. Well, then you've answered. Then you've answered my question. But if we didn't have the conversation, we didn't have you could answer and argue robustly, and we just had a newspaper, be it here in the United States or wherever, right? And you just says, well, look at this. There's these drag queens going in, trying to influence little kids. If you then did the story, isn't this nice? Entertainers are coming in to entertain the kids and get them interested in books and literature and the love of reading. That's a totally different twist. So I get Shaquille's point.
Yeah. And that's my point, Russ, is we need to keep educating. So and working to stop papers from writing things that are negative about drag queens going into schools and keep out there. I'll give you a lovely example. I was on another radio show and the lady said to me, "Oh, can you tell us when you first came out?"
And I said, you off, doesn't it? I know that.
Oh no, it doesn't actually. But I tell you, but my reply seemed to bother them. My reply was, "Wouldn't it be nice to live in a world where you didn't ask me that question? Would you ask a heterosexual guest when they first discovered they were heterosexual? And until they do that, I would keep fighting out there and talk about it." Stephen,
in fairness, I don't know the radio station. I don't know the broadcasters. I've got no skin in the game. My point would be this: if you're heterosexual, because of the way the world is, all right, you don't have to go to your mum and dad and go, "Hey, by the way, I'm heterosexual." But if you're gay, it would appear, and I'm trying to be as careful as I can be, it would appear that at some point when they're saying, why don't you go out with that nice Doris up the road or that, nice
Yeah,
Susan who
absolutely.
lives next door, there comes a point where you got to say, Mum, Dad, I don't want to go out with Susan, Doris, or Wendy because I'm not attracted to
Yeah,
women.
absolutely. And that's why we.
So,
That's
so
why
I
you need.
understand why the question was posed.
Oh yeah.
When I get why the question was posed.
I think
it's
you're
a
missing my
terrible
point.
question.
My point was,
Okay.
wouldn't it be nice to be in a world, and that's why I need to keep coming on shows and talking about LGBT, where they didn't ask, because you wouldn't ask a heterosexual person when they first discovered the
Because it simply doesn't matter. It's just human beings being diverse human beings.
So that's why we need to keep fighting.
Let's
I
look at this.
often go
I
and
agree
tell
with
my
you.
story of coming out.
Now, Shaquille, this is why this conversation has been really good. Would you mind putting the comment from Shaquille he put before on there?
Oh,
Because this is
the
why,
first one.
like
Okay,
I said,
this is
it's
one.
important to drill down into these conversations, because now we've asked the probing questions. It's getting more to the root of it. And I agree with you here, Shaquille. I'm concerned about this agenda in schools where youngsters are targeted, if that's the right word, and where they're being pushed into so-called gender affirmation drugs, which are irreversible and eventual irreversible surgery. Now, that to me, pushing anyone into surgery or into
I agree with
gender
that.
affirmation drugs, that all
Stephen,
sounds very
as much as I know and
agree
like
with
you, I agree with him on this. I do agree with him on this. I think it's shocking.
Well, I'm sorry,
think
I
it's
don't know.
shocking.
I don't know any schools that are pushing children onto drugs.
No, I don't.
It's an American.
So
it's
if it's going on in America, I mean, my own personal views is that, as you know, I'm a big supporter of the trans community. I wouldn't let my child have their ears pierced until they were 16. So I personally think. I personally, this is my own personal opinion, is that I think I'm a big fighter to stop doing things like boys have to do woodwork and metalwork. Boys have to do this in schools. But I think I know millions of girls that were tomboys that are now gorgeous looking women that enjoy enjoy their life, and many men that would like to have been women who now are very happy being a boy. I think you have to wait. Personally, that's my choice.
Thank you.
I would
after that 100% behind you.
I would have for me,
reasonable.
And I know someone who's trans, and I'm very fond of that person. We're great friends. But she is old enough to make his own decision.
That's right.
Certainly wouldn't force it on someone who doesn't have the life experience and rationale to really make that decision. I wouldn't be able to put an age on it, but I would have some sort of age.
But equally, I wouldn't force a child that wants to play with dolls, who's a boy, into playing with what we think a boy should do. They should be able to be themselves.
Neither would I. Neither would I. I completely agree, because we're not really on this planet for other people to define us, and perhaps this is your greatest. Do you know what I love? Watching Drag Race. And literally, it's very fresh in my mind because I'm watching it with my daughter, and she loves it. And Ginger Minge is so cool; she's so funny. She really is. She's hilarious. My favourite. Anyway, what I love about that community is this is who we are. Take us or leave us, and we don't care. We are who we are, and I love that, because you don't see so much of that in the. Perhaps it's born out of necessity. I don't.
Well,
know.
I
did a gig where there's a load of. It was a fundraiser we do it every year, and there's a load of LGBTQ people there.
Yeah.
And the chant went up: "We're here, we're queer, and we're going to drink beer." And it was the party of a bloody. And it was the party of a bloody lifetime. It was great.
Listen, an interesting story here. When I first went to New York and I just turned 20, I was in Christopher Street, and my friend said to me, "Look, can still be a bit dodgy at night here." He says, "Ever get in trouble, don't call for the muscle Marys with a moustache. Call for the drag queens, because they'll kick 7 types of shit out of them." And it's true. The drag queens are a community. They're tough. They've had it tough, and they're out there. And also, if you watch RuPaul's Drag Race, what art form?
Isn't it interesting, though?
What, sorry?
Stephen?
Yes, sir.
What did you say? What an art form?
Yeah, art form. It's an art
very
form.
Much so. Very much so.
Isn't it interesting, though, how public opinion changes and what we embrace and what we are repulsed by? Paul O'Grady made his name, and he was known for years and years as Lily Savage. Was hugely popular, and then broke into the mainstream and was embraced by the media Everybody loved him. Everybody saw it as funny. No one saw it as weird or anything like that. A hugely popular entertainer. And Lily Savage was indeed deeply sarcastic, and
Filthy.
And Paul O'Grady was the most charming man. And when he passed, there was a national kind of mourning, and everyone thought, "What a great entertainer!" No one has a problem with that at all, do they?
Again, it's how it's served up. And I say Paul Grady was. I mean, look at Dame Edna Everage, heterosexual man. Play. It's how it's served up, and again, there were huge entertainments. Danny LaRue back in the time, again. Absolutely. because it was served up one way. I think when people have to question their own sexuality, that's when the problem comes.
Which is why it comes full circle that if you're living a lie, and it comes out, and everything sort of, your life explodes around you. In not every case, but in many cases, you only have yourself to blame. You are the architect of your own destruction.
But no, I must offend some people here a bit that live a lie, because that might have been the social mores at the time.
No. I said not in every case. Absolutely.
Oh, I see. Yeah, we're a lot more gay friendly now. But
absolutely. If you think
back
you're
in the
going to
1950s or something,
I don't think people
might be forced to live that life.
I don't think.
I agree. Of course, some of these things were appalling.
There are many couples living in a happy, what looks like a heterosexual relationship, where the wife perhaps doesn't enjoy sex, and her husband prefers male company at times. I mean, let's put it this way: prostitutes would go out of business in London because sometimes the wife doesn't want to do certain things. They go and see a lady, but it doesn't really. What crime has been committed?
None.
In my opinion,
have we got time to do a little bit on EMDR before we finish, or do you want to do the?
We got 8 minutes. We got 8 minutes. Yeah, we got 8 minutes. Can you fit something in 8 minutes?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Okay, one of our lovely listeners.
Please don't go, Stephen. I'm handing it over to Neil.
Oh.
One of our lovely listeners sent me a private message. I'm not going to say who it is, but I do know this person is listening. And it was said that I'm using the they pronoun, so I don't identify them as male or female for privacy. It's not off the back of the conversation. So this person said, what do I think of EMDR? Because they're considering it for themselves. Now, EMDR stands for eye movement and desensitization reprocessing. It's relatively young. It's about 30 years old. It was discovered nearly 30 years ago, and it was found that eye movements, like moving your eyes in various positions, it was discovered by accident because the person who discovered it had a really bit of shocking news. I think it was something like they just found out they'd been diagnosed with a serious cancer, and they went, "Oh my God!" and put their eyes up there, and suddenly they noticed the feeling dramatically reduced, and they're like, "What's this?" And in some universal bit of serendipity, they got better and brought a whole new therapy into the world. It was found that eye movements could decrease negative emotions that came along with certain traumatic experiences and memories. So that is basically what EMDR is. I'm going to just dive into NLP here for a second. One of the tenets of NLP is behind every behavior is a positive intention. And if you imagine that we've got two levels of mind, a conscious and an unconscious mind. For example, conscious mind, it's very rational, very logical. The conscious mind, when I was up that Spinnaker Tower at the weekend, knew that when I walked on that walkway, the glass was toughened and I was not going to fall. I knew that. That was absolutely categoric. The unconscious mind was freaking out and I was scared, even though consciously, logically, I knew that I was safe. You might consider it ridiculous that a moth flies into the room and someone has a terrified reaction. But if my friend once got a moth in his mouth when he was very young, and since then he's had this phobia of moths.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Right? And it's just a trigger. He knows that moths are harmless. We all do. They can't bite you. They can't sting you. They're not poisonous. But he will have that reaction. So the unconscious mind, its very purpose is to keep you safe. Its downfall, if you like, it doesn't have any present moment awareness necessarily. It's only operating in the past. based on past experiences and memories, which have been coded in the mind body, in our mental or physical body, as experiences. So when anything vaguely triggers that, it will come up. It'll go, no, got to keep you safe, make you scared. Okay, it's trying to protect you. So these kind of therapies are addressing the root cause. In other words, how it's coded in the neurology, in the mind and body. And they allow, if I may, the energy to be processed and learned from, and then discarded like a suit of armor you no longer need. That's kind of how these therapies are designed to work.
Wow.
A really good metaphor is imagining a well-loved and respected army leader saying to the soldiers after the war's over and they're still on the battlefield, and he goes up to them and they're still on guard, they're still on high alert, like unconscious mind, high alert, watch for danger. And the sergeant says, friends, thank you for your service, but the war is no longer on. You're free to stand down. So they've got a positive intention, but it's misguided because they only have past awareness. Does that make sense?
Wow.
And that's how these kind of things work.
It does.
So it engages the mind and body, these therapies, which is what we do all day long anyway, but it's just a deliberate way of doing it for a particular purpose and intention, in this case, healing, rather than by default. Something happens, we have a reaction to it. Moth flies in, we have a reaction. Moth flies in, we stop, we do the process, we heal, no reaction. Now, some do consider it controversial, as there's not much research, but there's never a crowd on the leading edge, is there? It is somewhat specialist.
Yeah.
It's generally, excuse me. It's generally considered safe, but obviously do your due diligence on practitioners, because some people I've found in this industry kind of want to heal everyone else's life when it's their life that needs healing the most.
They sometimes make the best therapists.
They sometimes do, and they sometimes don't. And it really is finding someone that you're comfortable with that does have the qualifications, and do your due diligence.
So basically, so in a nutshell, because I've not heard of this therapy, and I thought it was quite up in things, like tapping therapy I've heard of.
Yeah. That's good.
So basically, it's taking childhood trauma, like if you were frightened of a rat or something like that, and undoing it in later life using these eye therapies. Yes.
And there's another one which is similar to it, which I personally prefer out of the two. I've not had EMDR. I have tried this one, and this one Paul McKenna writes about a lot in his book, and it's worth buying the book just for the chapter on this. And the book's called Instant Confidence and Charisma. You might think, what's that got to do with it? But it does make sense if you're going to be charismatic to get rid of the past baggage that's weighing you down.
Absolutely.
Now, this is the closest thing to a miracle he writes about. It's called havening, and it's based on the word haven, as in safe haven. And it involves stroking your shoulders. Now, what this does, it's a method which is designed to change the brain to de-traumatize the memory and remove its negative effects from both our psyche and body. And to put some meat on the bone of that, McKenna tried it on stage with someone that had very serious PTSD. This soldier had seen children blown to pieces on the battlefield. And with PTSD, you have a memory, a trigger, and the feeling comes back full on. Firework explodes outside, you're back on that battlefield with all the feelings because you've only got that past awareness. All right. He did this process for an hour. This creates delta waves in the brain, and they couldn't understand why all the psychological processes didn't really work, but this did. And the reason why is, number one, it creates delta waves, which are a very healing brain frequency. It's how a mother comforts a child. We naturally do it when we comfort ourselves. All right, where people just do it naturally. And would you believe it's a physical thing, but on the nano level, there's a molecule of potassium stuck in the neurotransmitter, so it keeps the door open. So in other words, when the stimulus comes, it's meant to reuptake it, process it, heal it. That's how we process things. But it leaves the door open because it's potassium's like a door stop, and it's jamming the door open. So that manifests in any trigger, then you will feel it as if it's happening in present time, even though it's not. What the havening does is remove that potassium, things can flow again, and then the healing comes. And this soldier, after an hour, what happens is he could talk about it openly as I'm talking to you about it now, but with no emotional sting. So there would be no emotional sting. It would be as emotional sting as, shall I have baked beans or pie for dinner? Something completely innocuous like that. And that's how it works.
That's amazing.
It uses consensual touch on arms and shoulders and sometimes hands. I did it with a close friend of mine here. She wanted me to sit really close, like 18 inches or a foot from her face. And I moved away and she said, no, come back. She was comfortable with that. Also, because we're friends, so it helped. But you don't have to. You can do it yourself. You agree with the therapist who's going to do the touching. Some people prefer to be touched. Some people prefer to do the touching themselves. And the term for these therapies is, thank you, Liz, is neurobiological. Because it literally is. It's
and
neurological.
that's where we have to leave it.
A biological component.
Oh, you're joking.
And that was the new discovery.
Neil, that's absolutely fascinating. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Are you a therapist yourself?
We are right.
No, I'm not, but I read a lot about it and I'm interested in it. And I do practice NLP when asked to.
Thank you ever so much. That's really interesting.
Stephen, we will have you back. Bless you for being so open and so honest, and for
that's what I'm here for.
We want you back.
Really good to meet you again, dude.
Oh, it's great. I love chatting to you, and that was fascinating. I'm going to look it up now.
Neil,
thank you.
Bless you for everything as always.
Thank you, and to our listener,
Neil and I will
I hope
be back
that was
on
helpful
Wednesday.
to you. And there's a website for you to check out.
Havening.
There we go. Havening.org. Until Wednesday at 12. Take care.